Brahim's holding Berhad or Brahim's is an airport-centric business. They focus on in-flight catering and restaurant. They seems to be having a very bright future ahead of them. But then, in 2015, they're having trouble with the Malaysia Airlines. And in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic strikes. So it is hard for them to gain money because the border are closed and people are not going anywhere. So the only thing that they can do is diversify themselves and venture into a new market. So today we will see if Brahim can venture into the Algerian market.
Algeria's background and the key elements that may affect will influence the prayer of the Algeria for Brahims. For Algeria, the population of Algeria is 41 million, and the major languages are Arabic, French, and Berber. The major religion is Islamic. Algeria's economic is dominated by its export of oil and gas, and the despite world price fluctuations, commodities still account for about a third of the country's gross domestic product each year. And the Algeria economic has experienced several years of challenges following the sharp drop in global oil prices since 2014. There are key elements. First of all, the continued slowdown in global energy demand has put a significant strain on Algeria's physical and external position. Secondly, Algeria's restrictive political, economic, and continued adherence to the ISI model limited the country's FDI. Algeria has one of the lowest level of FDI in Africa. Third, the service sector contributes a relatively small amount of the country's gross domestic product and employs only a small fraction of the workforce. Last, Algeria must survive the recession, and strict blockade measures introduced to contain the spread of the COVID-19 virus and the significant decline in international hydrocarbon export prices and volumes in the first half of 2020.
I want to explain about the cross-cultural factors that result in cross-cultural risk. There are two ethnic here. There are Mozabites or Berbers and the Chamba Arabs have a marginalization conflict. Both groups accuse one another of marginalization. The Chamba say that Mozabites have used exclusive social structures in their own schools, mosques, and cemeteries. And the Mozabit says that Chamba march in arrogantly and as Arabs get preferential treatment from the government, from Algerian government, in the form of easier access to administrative jobs or living space. The Mozabites also feel the construction or more new village and districts by Arab newcomers is systematically displacing them and threatening their identity. Essentially, Arab population confronts ethnic minorities with a sense of superiority, says Ruth Gelius, a specialist on African affairs, and said by Fadil Tilani, there are no Berbers in the Arab Maghreb. They have been completely Arabized. This show that the conflict of culture in Algeria is very, very, what we say, in threatening condition, in red conditions. So building a business here will be unbeneficial for a company such as air flight company. There are at least four why it's threatening the company. The first is tendency to fail to adapt management practice across cultures, because in management theories, models, and practice are laden with culture-specific assumption. Managing different people in Algeria, which will be contained by Berbers and Arabs, will trigger an internal conflict which will lead to management failing. And the second, tendency to fail to get into the local market. When the human resource is only from one ethnic, maybe Arabics or Berbers, the Berbers tend to avoid the company and will trigger protests on a company. They only employs an ethnic when they try to recruit the Berbers. It will redo the problem number one, so it's very, very dilemmatic for about the managing the human resource. So now the third problem is lead to assignment failures, such as to sell product to the whole market. It's definitely the hard way too for a company to grow, because when the people don't like the company because of this social cultural conflict, how they can grow? Okay, so the last problem I state is a little business failure. According to Felicity Menzies, in her article, most expatriate failures are not due to technical or professional incompetence. The main causal factors involve difficulties with cultural adaptations. The cultural adaptation is very, very important in business, such as culture shock, spousal adjustment, communication barriers, interpersonal conflicts, lifestyle change, local business practice, and insulation, and many more. Here shows that if the company wanna open the market in Algeria with this kind of conflict, it will be very difficult for them. But if they can manage it, maybe they can open. But I suggest here to do not open yet, because the social cultural between Arabs and the Berbers.
I will explain about the country factors that will result in country risk. There are 5 levels of country risk which are very low, low, moderate, high and very high. And Algeria is a country risk tier 5 country where it has a very high level of country risk. The first factor is economic factor. Energy sector plays a dominant role in the Algerian economy because Algeria has a hydrocarbon-oriented economy. Oil accounts for over 90% of exports and a majority of government revenues. But because of the pandemic COVID-19, it is expected the energy prices will drive down significantly. In addition, a hydrocarbon law that was introduced in early 2020 designed to increase foreign investment through improved contract terms and tax rates is not expected to take place as proposed due to the drop in hydrocarbon prices and demand. Moreover, headwinds to economic growth include the country's high level of dependency on hydrocarbons, rising unemployment rates and protests. Due to these economic factors, it affects the economic risk level in Algeria, which was ranked high. Therefore, Brahim should not consider entering Algeria's market because to invest in a country that has weaker finances and an unsound economy will affect Brahim's investment profitability and also the dependence of the economy on hydrocarbons will increase dependence on imports of transformed goods. The political factor in Algeria also affects its political risk. The level of the risk was ranked very high. Protesters called off protests in March for the first time in over a year due to the nationwide lockdown restrictions imposed to curb the spread of COVID-19. However, anti-government protests remain a source of political instability as the president's reforms are unlikely to prevent them. In addition, Algeria ranks 157th out of 190 countries in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, highlighting the difficulties of starting a business owing to the regulatory environment, where foreign majority shareholdings are prohibited, administrative processes are inefficient and inconvenient, exchange control rules are very restrictive and unpredictable. The country's reputation for widespread corruption is well documented. Therefore, Brahim should not consider to enter the market because Algeria does not look like the most attractive destination for foreign investors today because of the challenging environment, and also the political climate in Algeria is unfriendly because of the complexity of legislation, especially tax law, to the outside investors. Therefore, that might result in an anticipated loss to Brahim.
Next, I will be explaining a few currency and financial issues in Algeria that will lead to currency and financial risk.
First, the foreign exchange. The domestic currency of Algeria, which is the Algerian dinar, is weaker in comparison to Malaysian ringgit, as 1 Algerian dinar is equal to RM 0.031. Second, the corporate financial information in Algeria is often unavailable, and when available, it is often unreliable. The debt collection is also unpredictable. Last but not least, increase in external debt. According to a news report, Algeria seems closer to financial crisis accelerated by the fall in the price of oil and the health crisis, and it is serious enough for the country to be forced to resort to external debt. An increase in external debt will lead to decline in economic growth of the country. Debt servicing has also significant and negative impact on GDP growth rate. As the debt servicing tends to increase, there will be fewer opportunities for economic growth. Since Brahim is a Malaysian company and it is looking to invest in Algeria, the domestic currency, which is Algerian currency, is weaker in compared to Malaysian currency, and this gives an opportunity to Brahim to make a name in the Algerian market with cheaper products, because a weak domestic currency will stimulate export and make imports more expensive. However, the usual tendency for any businesses before entering a new market is to analyze the financial performance of the existing businesses in that market to determine the profitability of the business environment. As a new investor, Brahim would like to do the same too, but due to the unreliability and unavailable of the financial information and also limited data, it is difficult for Brahim to determine its profitability. So it makes it difficult in making investing decision. By investing into a new country, Brahim intends to diversify, increase their profit and revenues, and look for new growth opportunities. But looking at the financial condition of Algeria, it seems to be difficult for Brahim to make a name in that market because of less opportunity for growth.
I'm going to talk about the commercial issue relating to the related industry. The first issue is import restrictions. In recent decades, the Southern Middle East Sea, which includes the 5 Northern African countries, become more and more reliant on food imports. A contributing factor is a rapid population growth, the complex aid and limited resource conditions. In recent years, volatile food prices and political change have intensified the problems of reliance on food imports and threatened food safety, depended on imports, and has threatened Algeria's food security. Any kind of import restrictions might put this country on high commercial risk. Second thing is hydrocarbon market. Algeria has around 75 billion USD dollar in hydrocarbon sale foreign currency reserves from according to a report from 2014. The country's heavy reliance on the hydrocarbon market comparison 95% of foreign exchange income make it vulnerable to its economic shocks. Such economic shock might lead to commercial risk. Third thing is complexity of legislation. Beside many other legal complications, the tax law of Algeria makes it hard for foreign investors to merge with the system. Non-resident interior performing service contracts in Algeria are subjected to the WHT regime. The 24% WHT, which encompasses the IPS, the TAB, and the VAT, is required to be believed on service only. The calculation based on the gross amount of the service indicate. Fourth thing is political instability. President Abdelaziz Bouteflika decision hold 5 consecutive elections in April 2019. In spite of his poor health, he caused Algeria's biggest political uprising in more 2 decades. Political instability in any country has high risk of putting foreign investors in commercial risk.
In conclusion, Brahim should not enter the Algerian market because it will be hard for them to survive in the market. And with the current problem that they have, it will be much more problem to them if they enter the Algerian market.